ReliaQuest mental performance coaches Dr. Nicole Detling and Darren McMains interview top performers across multiple industries to unpack the strategies and the mindset they use to get the job done. Welcome to No Show Dogs, powered by ReliaQuest. Hey, welcome back to the No Show Dogs podcast, powered by ReliaQuest. I'm alongside Dr. Nicole Detling today, and today we get to learn from Dr. Michaela Kiersch. Michaela is a professional rock climber based in Salt Lake City, Utah, with over 20 years of climbing experience. In 2024, she made history. Check this out. Don't miss this. She made history as the first woman to climb both the 515 and V15 grades, which represent the climbing difficulty. Now, we'll get to that in just a moment, so don't worry. But now, this is what else she's done. She's established numerous first ascents and female ascents worldwide and competed at the highest levels, including the World Cup and World Championships during her 6 years on the USA climbing team. Michaela is also a strong contender for the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, specializing in lead climbing. Now, in addition to her climbing career, Michaela also holds a doctorate in occupational therapy and practices part-time in rehabilitation. Her passion for healthcare is rooted in her late mother's experience with occupational therapists, inspiring Michaela to empower patients through vulnerable moments to support their recovery. Doc, she's one of the best rock climbers in the world and an occupational therapist. Really, really special what she's been able to accomplish so far in her career. And I know our listeners are going to love learning about her mindset. But before we give our takeaways and jump into that full interview, I mentioned that she's the first woman in history to climb both a 515 and a V15. Now, Doc, you know what these are. I did not. So for our listeners that aren't familiar with rock climbing, we have Michaela describe it just for you. So let's just play that clip now.
So in rock climbing, there are three different disciplines. The first would be speed climbing, which is how fast you can get to the top. And the other two are bouldering and sport climbing, which are the two disciplines that I participate in. Bouldering is like a single rock that is maybe only 30 feet tall at the most. You use crash pads on the bottom in case you fall. And typically the movement is more powerful. So, in order to determine how hard a boulder is, we use a grading scale that starts with V. The easiest is V0. So, imagine like a child on a playground climbing wall. That would be a V0. And the hardest right now is V17. So, on that scale, I've achieved V15, which is really pretty much as hard as it gets. And in sport climbing, we use a different grading scale. Sport climbing is much longer routes. So you climb with a rope and a harness for protection. They can be all the way up to 100 plus feet tall. And the scale we use starts with 5. So a 5.0 might be walking on slightly downhill. And you might see that progress to 5.1, which is walking flat, 5.3, walking through sand. So in rock climbing, generally, we see those grades start about 5.7. And the hardest right now is 5.15D. So I climb 515A, which again is towards the hardest end of that scale. And this means the holes are very small, 6 millimeter edges, they're far apart, and it's a lot of hard moves all in a row to get to the top. In order to say that you've done a rock climb, it's important to know that you have to start at the beginning and climb all the way to the end without any assistance or without any falls.
All right, Doc, let's give some quick takeaways here. What were the things that stuck out to you?
So I really loved this interview. I thought it was really fun to talk to someone from a completely different profession that we haven't had yet on the No Show Dogs podcast. I love that she's the first to achieve those milestones that no other woman has reached by climbing the V15 and the 515. But what I really appreciated is her mindset and perspective on being the first to do something like that. She talks about what hasn't been done before doesn't matter. Don't look around you and say, gosh, I don't know if I could do that because no one else has. What she focuses on more is it's about what you can achieve. And she gives a few examples in there, like, graduating from high school may not be a big deal once you become an adult, but you had never done that before. So what is it that you can achieve? Just because no one's has ever done it before doesn't mean that you can't achieve that thing. And she talks about a quote that her mom used to say to her all the time, which is climb like Michaela. don't try to be like anyone else. Don't look at what other people have done and assume that you can or cannot based on what other people have done, but really focus on yourself and being the best version of yourself, regardless of what everyone else is doing. And I think that's a great message for all of us. What are you doing to become the best version of you? And it goes back to what our founder CEO, Brian Murphy, talks about a lot, which is why not us? How good can we be? And think about that from a personal level for each of our listeners. Why not you? How good could you be? You'll never know until you put yourself out there.
It's good. Really good. Yeah, I love this interview so much too. And one line that Michaela said that really stuck out to me was when she said, success doesn't mean you did it alone. It just means that you did it. A large part of our audience we know are highly motivated, extremely driven individuals. And I want you all to hear that again. Success doesn't mean you did it alone. It just means that you did it. Like, it's okay to ask for help, collaborate, get some coaching, bring your teammates along. Like, we all know this, we're better together than we are alone. And I think a lot of times we, and myself is included in this, by the way, but we take too much pride in accomplishing something by ourselves, not realizing that we're wearing ourselves out. We're stripping others of the opportunity to contribute and generally just not reaching the level of excellence we could unless we included others, right? And look, I get it. You can't always include everybody. There's that popular African proverb that's routinely quoted. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So the speed at which something needs to be done should always be taken into account, obviously. But in Michaela's case, of this decades-long pursuit of doing something that's never been done before, she needed support. And listeners, you're going to need support if you're trying to do something great. It's that simple. So just don't let the pride of doing something alone rob you of the power of the team and the joy of accomplishing something together. And with that being said, let's jump into our conversation with Dr. Michaela Kiersch.
Hey, welcome to No Show Dogs. Michaela, we are so happy to have you here and joining us today. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Yeah, great. So I just want to start off by how did you decide to attack this goal, this project of being the first woman to climb V15 and 515?
When I first started climbing, I was about 6 years old. It was the turn of the century, so about the year 2000. And at that time, the hardest grades ever achieved in rock climbing were V15 for bouldering and 515A for sport climbing. So to a little kindergarten me, it was like the gold standard in climbing. As hard as it gets, as good as you could possibly be. And of course, at that time, it wasn't something that I felt like was achievable, but it was, in the stars, just something like that I couldn't even conceive of. And as I progressed in my career from kindergartner to competitive athlete on the US team and then climbing outside, it became more and more achievable for me. And I was able to sort of bring it down from the stars and make it more into a goal and no longer a dream. So it felt like something I could create a strategic plan for and work towards and potentially accomplish. And that's exactly what I did.
That's amazing. So, do you have a moment or recollection of when that shifted from being this pipe dream that, gosh, I would love to do that someday, to that actually is possible for me? Do you have a recollection of that? Can you walk us through that mentality shift?
Yeah, so there definitely wasn't a specific single moment. I had a very linear trajectory in my climbing career where it was really just one foot in front of the other, and I had steady improvement. And I think one of the main reasons that is because I'm a very consistent person. I show up every day, I work hard every day, and because of that, I saw like very clear linear progress through the climbing grades, and it became a logical next step. I don't think anyone was surprised by these accomplishments because it was clear to everyone that it was the next grade for me to try and tackle.
Yeah, I love that for so many reasons. I love you're talking like the hard work, the effort, it just became logical for you. So that's when it kind of became more of a reality and not necessarily a pipe dream. I absolutely love that. I'm curious, what would your 5-year-old self like what would she think about what you've accomplished now?
I hope she would be inspired at that time in climbing, especially, and just generally, I think in sports and sports media, there was a lot of men sort of on the covers of magazines and on TV and in the commercials and, our Olympic stars. And so I think a lot of the athletes I looked up to at that time were male athletes. And it's very cool and empowering to think now younger climbers and just little girls all over the country and boys can look up to really strong and accomplished female athletes. And I think that's like one of the main differences that I'm excited to be a part of.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. So, even though the progression was linear, there were setbacks along the way. A lot of times you just didn't accomplish what you wanted to. In fact, Dreamtime, the one climb that you did accomplish in this series, was you had failed before a couple years earlier. You went and tried it, and it just didn't work out. I'm curious if you could explain some of those setbacks that you experienced along the way to achieving that accomplishment.
Yeah, so the V15 that I did Dreamtime, I had tried 2 or 3 years before, and I couldn't do any of the moves. I couldn't hang on the holds. They're very small edges, like 6 millimeter edges, the size of a quarter, basically against a wall. And I just didn't have the strength. I didn't have the ability. And rather than feeling shut down by that, I was extremely motivated. And I went home and I worked really hard and built up my strength over a several year period of time. But in addition to that, I did like have a broken finger 6 months before I was going on this trip, which is like it for a rock climber, a very severe injury. And it was just like earth shattering to me. And I had to have surgery. It was dislocated. I was in a splint. And the mental recovery from that was tough. But I focused on what I can do in this moment with these circumstances as opposed to what I might not be able to do with a broken finger. And I think having that growth mindset is what made such a big difference for me. And allowed me in 6 months to go from devastating injury in the operating room to achieving the hardest climb I've ever attempted.
Yeah, you know what? That's pretty phenomenal. But I'm sure you had those moments where you did feel the devastation too. So how did you pull yourself out of that? Because I'm thinking of a lot of our listeners who have been rejected, who have been through struggles. Maybe they're going through something really hard right now. What advice would you give them in that moment of the adversity and the struggle and just that devastation that is a normal feeling to have? How would you advise them based on what you went through?
I think that for me, it was important to recognize where that devastation was coming from. And it was coming from a place of, I love this sport so much. I want to participate in it. And I've worked really hard. And I don't want that to be a waste or for nothing almost. And in recognizing that, I was able to say, like, well, I can go to the gym. I just have to adapt. And being really flexible with myself in the moment and allowing my expectations of myself to change with the current circumstance. It's not that I can't participate, it's just that it looks a little bit differently now than what I had envisioned. And I think being able to be flexible and adaptable in those situations of adversity is what allows you to ultimately be successful in the end because you will encounter setbacks and obstacles, and it's about how you approach them.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's great. Michaela, I love that so much. I was watching you climb La Rambla this morning on YouTube. By the way, to our listeners, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Michaela Kiersch on La Rambla. It's awesome. And as I'm sitting here in the comfort of my own home, watching you climb this massive boulder, this rock, and again, I am so amateur, be it whatever's before amateur. That's what I am when it comes to bouldering, right? So that's where I'm at. But I'm watching you climb this thing and my heart is pounding again from my own couch. And so I just started thinking about you and other climbers in the community. Like, but you specifically, do you ever experience fear up there on the face of a rock?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, you never really get used to being hundreds of feet off the ground, kind of dangling on this rope. I mean, the ropes, the size that we use, 9.8 millimeter ropes, right? Like it's small. It's like a cord, a jump rope. And of course, we use high quality gear, but just that feeling of exposure And with climbing, of course, comes falling. So you fly through the air hundreds of feet off the ground. It's always unsettling, but I think that's what is also thrilling about this sport is it does feel like exciting and not life threatening, but there's an adrenaline component for sure.
Is there a specific strategy? I mean, you've been doing this for so long, it's probably almost like breathing at this point. But if you were to articulate a strategy on how you kind of shift from the fear of potentially falling or getting injured to like just the thrill of the climb, like how do you shift when you're in the middle if you kind of fear maybe or if you start to feel that fear creep in?
I think there's definitely an aspect of experience where I've fallen so many times. So it's not completely unknown to me. But I think because my goals and the climbs that I choose are so challenging, I only have space in my mind to think about how can I achieve this. There's no room for what if I don't? What if I fall? What if I'm scared? I have to be so focused on the steps that I need to take to get to the top of this climb or this rock that it doesn't even approach my mental space.
Yeah, I think climbing is honestly one of the sports that I've engaged in anyway, the experience that I've had that leads itself toward flow and momentum and being in the moment. You absolutely have to be in that moment in order to find that next hold and to advance, to move up. And I think that a lot of people could experience that or take lessons from that in terms of being in the moment in whatever your performance is and whatever you're doing, and really getting your mind more focused on how do I move forward, whether it's in business, entrepreneurship, whatever it might be, like what's the next right step to take? And the more you can focus on that, the more likely you'll achieve success. And climbing is just such a great sport that really shows that. If you're not in that moment on that rock, you're going to end up flying through the air.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we call it the flow state, and I think there is something so intuitive about climbing just to human beings in general. Like, it is part of our survival in this world, being able to navigate a terrain like that. And so I think when you enter the flow state, it's purely just like, where can I go next? How
Yeah.
can I go up? And I love that, like, clear direction. I'm going to the top of this.
Yeah. Have you been able to apply that principle in your life outside of climbing as well?
Yes, I think, I'm definitely type A, and we could say that maybe that's because I'm a rock climber, or maybe I'm good at rock climbing because I'm type A. But I do find that I am very goal driven and I like to hold myself accountable. And the way that I do that is through strategic planning, small goals, actionable steps. And I find that if I can hold myself accountable and be consistent and work towards my goals in that way, it boosts my own confidence. Like I feel empowered because I know I'm doing everything I can in this moment to climb upwards, physically and metaphorically.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I'm curious. So you work towards something that's never been done by another woman, right? This is you were the first to do this. And I'm curious if you could identify what does it take mentally and physically to continue to work towards something that's never been done. It's you've not seen another woman do this. You didn't have necessarily a role model to show you it could be done. You just had your own inner belief and confidence in yourself that you are capable of doing that. So, what does that take mentally and physically to continue to work towards something that's never been done?
I think that whether or not something has been done doesn't feel like it holds me back internally. It's more about, can this be done for me? Because until I've done something, then it's never been done by me, right? So I'm able to overcome that in every step in my life, like graduating high school. It hadn't been done by me, and then I did it, obtaining my doctorate, things like that. It's like I know that I can do hard things. So whether or not someone else has done them before doesn't really apply to me.
I love that perspective. I hope all of our entrepreneurs
Yeah.
out there heard that. Just
Yeah.
because it hasn't been done by someone else, it doesn't matter. It hasn't been done by me, and I want to see how far I can go with it. That's cool.
Super cool. And you mentioned you have a doctorate as well, which, I mean, as if being a professional rock climber isn't difficult enough, you also have a doctorate in occupational therapy. So how do you balance those worlds? How does that work for you?
I think the balance can be hard, especially if you're trying to have all of your cups filled at once. For me, I learned that like I can't pour everything into every bucket all the time. So sometimes I'm all in on school. And when I was getting my doctorate, that's exactly what I did. I got a 4.0. I attended all my classes. I wanted to absorb as much information as I could because I wanted to be the best occupational therapist that I could be. And when I graduated from OT school, I was able to kind of redistribute some of that energy into climbing. So now I'm focusing more on climbing and I'm working extremely part time in OT. And I think just allowing yourself to have that flexibility and honoring your own priorities, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice because I'm always doing what I've decided I want to do and what my priority is for that period of time.
I love that. We talk a lot about that here around just the importance of presence and how presence is more important than balance. Because, like, when we're trying to balance things, just that in and of itself says we're trying to be in two different places at the same time, which creates tension. And so I love the idea of just like, hey, when I was getting my doctorate, I was all in, dominated it. And now when I'm climbing, I'm all in there. No Show Dogs is brought to you by ReliaQuest, a global leader in cybersecurity. ReliaQuest helps enterprise cybersecurity teams contain threats in minutes with its AI-powered security operations platform, GreyMatter. ReliaQuest makes security possible for the most trusted enterprise brands in the world. Learn more at ReliaQuest.com. I was thinking about this earlier. I shared this with Doc a little bit. Do you think, like, with the time constraints, I'm sure of what it takes to get your doctorate and have your career, can those time constraints be an advantage in driving the focus you have in your rock climbing? Like, because I think about just the importance of constraints sometimes just demand focus, and we don't have time to kind of put things off. If I know I have 2 weeks to go dominate a bunch of routes and whatever I'm going to do, like, do you see those constraints being an advantage for you in some way, shape, or form?
I think in some ways, yes. Because I was in a year-round program on a semester system, I had like very specific chunks of time where I could go climbing. So spring break, winter break, things like this, which allowed me to really like plan for a goal I could accomplish in a short amount of time and training for that specific goal. So if I could only go to the gym for an hour because I had exams or whatever, I knew exactly how to spend that hour because I had a very clear goal ahead of me and a timeline on when I could go attempt it. So I think in that way, I developed like a very efficient training program and it was very successful ultimately. I think the key difference now that I have more time to focus on climbing is I can choose loftier goals that I'm not sure if I can achieve in a short amount of time. They're more long term and success isn't guaranteed. Whereas when I was in my doctorate program, I wanted to be successful when I went climbing because I wanted to go and have fun. And, that was my release from an extremely stressful program. So I chose goals that I could definitely accomplish in 2 weeks. And now I'm able to aim a little bit higher.
I
So
love it.
good.
So you're able to kind of focus your goals around what your current circumstances are and find goals that are challenging for you, but yet they're achievable within whatever constraints you currently have within your life. And that probably has helped your mindset as well continue to drive toward those goals in a positive way rather than beating yourself up for not being able to accomplish something big.
Yeah, I think it's important for me to have areas where I'm successful. I don't like to feel challenged by everything in my life all at once. And graduate school was a huge challenge. And I enjoy climbing hard and difficult climbs, but I didn't need to be completely brutalized by my sport on top of a doctorate.
Yeah, yeah, smart. I'm curious, like, what have you learned from occupational therapy that's helped you in climbing? And what have you learned from climbing that's helped you in occupational therapy?
Occupational therapy, and for those who don't know, it's an allied health profession. So we work with patients and individuals, basically throughout the lifespan and across many settings to be able to engage in occupations or activities that are meaningful to them. So in inpatient rehab, which is where I'm currently working, I might see someone who had a stroke and loses function in half of their body. And what we're working on is empowering them to write their name, to hold their baby, to get dressed. So there's a neurological component, a physical component, muscular component, but also a mental component. And I think that everyone deals with similar circumstances in their life where they may need some outside support to engage in things that are important to them. And I think because of that, like occupational therapy can be applied to every aspect of my life all the time. And I do take some of those approaches towards my climbing. I'm not afraid to outsource to those who have more expertise. I'm not afraid to ask for help, whether that's with a training plan or going on a trip for safety. And I think that's something that I learned through occupational therapy. Like, it's important to have a community that you can rely on and that helps you grow.
Hey, Michaela, I was thinking earlier, you mentioned adaptability and just how important that is, obviously, to what you're trying to do. And you've obviously had to be incredibly adaptable in your climbing career, from managing injuries to even dealing with weather conditions, things that you can't control. How do you maintain your focus and even motivation when circumstances aren't ideal for you?
Yeah, this is definitely one of my biggest challenges personally because I like to be in control because I feel like that gives me the best chances of success. But I think it's important to remember that you can never control everything, and there will be opportunities, especially if you're able to create them for yourselves. So if I'm not able to do this climb now, it's a rock. It'll be there next week, next month, next year. I can create opportunities for myself to be successful, and I have to let go of the time demands that I'm placing on that if it's, outside circumstances are impacting that.
So I love that. I love it's funny because you said it's a rock. It'll be there you know, tomorrow, next. It's like, oh yeah, it probably will be. Yeah, I would think so. Um, I love the idea, and you mentioned this earlier around flow, and we talked a little bit about it. And when you think about the three conditions that need to be present for flow state, and I think it's why it shows up so much in climbing is, clearly defined goal. The goal must be outside of your comfort zone. It must be difficult, but not like so difficult that it crushes you, but definitely difficult. And then there's got to be clear progress being made, like you feel like you're making progress and you kind of know where the next steps are. And so I think it just really lends way to achieving a flow state. And one thing we always talk about here is get a little better, right? Just get a little better, get a little better. And I think about climbing, I would imagine over the years, that's how you've gotten to where you've gotten, right? Is just, you didn't jump on a 515 yesterday, right? Or I mean, after one day, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? There was a lot of training that went into that along this journey. And I know that was the goal you had when you were in kindergarten, but along this journey, were there instances where there was maybe a new goal or a new shinier thing or something, or has that always just been the North Star and you've just been going after that thing?
My relationship with climbing has changed a lot over the course of my career. And it started as something like very recreational, very fun, but I was naturally good at it. And having like a competitive mindset, especially as a child, I was ultra competitive, and being a hard worker, naturally I saw that progression early on and I joined a competitive climbing team. I did have like a pretty big loss in my life when I was 15. My mother died, and I had to sort of re-examine my whole life at that age, and I didn't have a lot of other familial support. So I felt very on my own in that time. And because of that, like the only way that I knew to go forward was to have a plan with clear goals. I didn't like this feeling of free falling or floating in space. So with school, I had a clear path, like all the way through graduate school for occupational therapy. And the culmination of that was a career that would sustain me for the rest of my life. And with climbing, having a goal like V15 or 515 or competitive goals at the time, it gave me purpose and it filled my space where I was at the climbing gym with my friends multiple days a week. I had structure to my life and I had purpose. And I think because of that combination of things, I did sort of have this like light at the end of the tunnel for my whole life. And in developing that habit, when I achieved the goal at the end, I just made another. And I think that's now like ingrained into my system. I am like a high achieving person, and I get a lot of fulfillment from being better, being a better version of me at all times.
I love this so much. There's so much gold involved here, and I'm thinking about our listeners. We're business leaders and entrepreneurs who are dealing with adversities and struggles, and the things that they could be learning from you in this setting and what you're saying. I want to make it really clear for them, though. So, thinking about your experiences through climbing, through occupational therapy, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs or business leaders about breaking through their own barriers, the things that they might be dealing with or struggling with?
I think the first step, undeniably, is believing that you can. And if you don't believe that you can overcome, you need to find a way to get yourself there, to have the vision, because you cannot move forward towards something that you don't think is possible. I really believe that. And I think second is making a strategic plan with built in goals, mini accomplishments, celebrations along the way, because it is important to track your progress and to celebrate. I'm a little bit better today than I was yesterday or last week or last month. I'm closer to this goal. And I think that's important to maintain momentum.
Mhm.
And again, really outsourcing to other people in your community, those who have expertise, those that you can lean on to help you get there. Because success doesn't mean you did it alone, it just means that you did it. And the more people that you can pull into that, the more you can grow, the more you can learn, I think the better.
Awesome. Excellent answer. Thank you for that. I
Yeah,
love how you just outlined that so beautifully.
it was, right? I mean, belief, a plan, get some help and support, like
Yeah.
so clean.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious because here's something I run into, Doc. I'm sure you run into this too, working with leaders sometimes that maybe don't take the time along the way when you have this long drawn out plan to celebrate a little bit, right? Which you mentioned. And because I think sometimes there's a concern of like, well, if we celebrate, are we going to invite complacency into our team or invite complacency into our own life? And like, what would you say to those leaders? Like, what would you say to those coaches and leaders that like, well, we haven't got to the ultimate thing. We're not going to celebrate until we get there. Like, what would you say?
I just don't agree with that mentality because I think complacency would come from stagnation, right? Like you're plateauing. But if you're seeing short, small progress linearly over time, I think that is worth celebrating because who knows how long it'll take you to come to that ultimate end goal or what you might encounter on the way, like unforeseen circumstances. It's important to celebrate your wins in the moment, internally and as a team. I think without that, purpose can feel like a little lost.
Sure. I love how you said that. And I remember when I was first working in Major League Baseball, I was with the San Francisco Giants. And one thing that we did after every game was turn out the lights. We had a smoke machine. There were disco lights in there. Music was blaring, and guys would come in, and it was like a dance party for a good like 15 minutes. And as you can imagine, a bunch of dudes dance party, like, whatever. But point being is I remember sitting there seeing it the first time, and I'm thinking like we'd won a couple of world championships at this point, and that's always the ultimate goal. But I remember thinking like, hey, we're going to win 90 games this year. Are we going to do this 90 times? And everybody's like, yep. Like, yep, because it's fun. It's just fun. And it, kind of goes back to that old principle, like what's celebrated is repeated, and obviously it helps to have a bunch of type A, extremely driven people in there that are not going to think, oh, that was a great dance party. Let's never do that again. No, it's like, that was a great dance party. Let's do that again tonight. So anyway, I feel you when you say that and just the importance of celebrating along the way, because what's celebrated is repeated. I do
Yeah, I want to
believe
make
that.
a point on that real quick,
Yeah.
DMAC. I know you're about to move on to another question, but I think what's important there is the celebration doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be
Right.
meaningful. Like it
Yeah.
was 15-minute dance
15
party.
minutes. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like you took the whole day off work and you took the company on a weekend retreat or
Yeah.
right.
True.
Just those little celebratory moments can be all it takes to continue that path and that progress.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. And we kind of did have like a 15-minute rule where it's like 15 minute to soul can feel bad for yourself because we lost, or 15 minutes to celebrate the heck out of it because we won. But after that, we got to do it again tomorrow. So, get it
Yeah.
out of your system either way and learn from it, and then let's move on. I don't know if this question really moves the conversation forward, but I'm really curious on what goes into naming a route because I've been doing some research, and I just want here's Here are 4 of my favorites, Michaela, by the way. Electro Boogie,
Yeah.
great route name. Body Count, fantastic. Foxy Lady, let's go. And then this last one kind of scares me. It's the Left Hand of Darkness. But anyway, that all being said, what goes into naming a route? I'm just curious. And then, have you ever named a route? Like what goes into this?
Yeah, so the first person to climb a rock climb is the first ascent, and they get to choose the name. So sometimes it could go with like a theme from the area, or it could go like it could mean something about the climb itself. It could be literally the first ascensionist's favorite song. It could be anything that they want it to be. So in Magic Wood, which is where all of these climbs are, a lot of the same people did the first ascents and named all of the boulders. So there's like some themes in the forest there. And I have also done a first ascent, and it's at this wall called the Gold Coast because the rock is a golden color. So the theme of all of the names is gold. So 24 carats, black gold, golden boy. And the climb that I did, I named Goldilocks because I'm blonde, but also this climb is very difficult and you need perfect conditions in order to do it. Not too hot, not too cold, not too dry, not too rainy.
Uh,
So that's why I named it Goldilocks.
I see what you did there. How long did it take? Because that's brilliant, actually. I'm like, oh, I love that. How long did it take you to come up with that name?
I was trying this climb for maybe 6 weeks. So, over the course of 6 weeks, a lot of people suggested name ideas to me, but ultimately, Goldilocks is the one that stuck.
Do you have a favorite name of all the routes that you've climbed? Like a favorite name?
Oh, that's tough.
Not the favorite climb, just the favorite name.
Yeah, there is this area in Kentucky where all of the climbs are named from Willy Wonka, and the area is called the
Yes.
Chocolate Factory. So there's two climbs side by side, and one is Oompa and the other is Loompa, and it's just kind of fun.
How can you not love that?
Yeah.
If and when I get into this, those will be my first climbs. Like how can you, like, I just went and finished Oompa and Loompa. And like, when can you say that? Like, that's so awesome.
Next time you're in Kentucky.
Yeah, what are those rated, Michaela?
10D and 11A. So
No,
it's
never
actually
mind. Never mind. I got some time. Yeah, never mind. That will not be my first climb.
We'll throw you on a top rope and just pull you up, and you can just
Yeah.
climb
Yeah.
it.
Yes, actually, the one to the left of those is called the glass elevator. So we can just elevate you to the top.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I love it. Michaela, I know we're getting up towards the end of this, and this has been so good. We call this the No Show Dogs podcast because it's not about looking good. It's just about being good, right? And we don't care what it looks like as long as we get the job done. And so with that, the final question that we ask every guest is just kind of reflecting on your career up to this point. What do you think are some of the things that you've been willing to do that you think maybe others haven't, that have helped you have the success you've had up to this point in your career?
My mom used to say something to me before competitions, and she would say, climb like Michaela. And at the time, I was so angsty. I was like, "Ugh, what does that even mean, mom? Like, okay. But I've thought about it a lot over the years, and I think she just meant be true to who I am, which means climbing to my strengths and my abilities and doing it my way. And I think that has led me to a lot of success in my career because if you're trying to fit into another box or be someone else, even if they're successful in ways that you admire or you're inspired by, you're not going to reach your own full potential. And I think that's one of the keys is like just being really true to who you are and showing up consistently every single day and working hard to be a better version of that.
What an incredible answer. That was awesome.
Michaela, so good. I know people are going to want to follow you, find you, see what you're up to. Like, where can people find you after they hear this?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's just my name, Michaela Kiersch, spelled like Michael, but with an A at the end. And then Kiersch.
It's great. Michaela, thank you so much. Thank you so much for just sharing your hard-earned wisdom, how you see things, how you've approached things, how you've had the success you've had in your career. And we're so grateful for you to come on No Show Dogs today and to share what you've learned, and all the best to you going forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you.